Okay, so what is Apex first of all? So as we understand, Apex is one more language. It's a proper programming language. A proper programming language means this is where you can write logics, conditions, loops, everything. All right. Visual Force is just a markup language where you have certain tags and you can use the tags to design the page in a certain way. Right. Now, Apex is a strongly typed object-oriented programming language that allows developers to execute flow and transaction control statements. Okay, so this is a strongly typed object-oriented programming language that allows the developers to execute flow and transaction control statements. So basically, it allows the developers to control the transactions and to control the execution of certain things. And this is something which is natively used on Force.com platform. Apex programming cannot be used on any other platform. It's uh, mainly built for the Force.com platform. That's the platform on which we develop Salesforce apps. Apex enables developers to add business logic to most of the system events. So what does Apex do? It will allow the developers to add business logics to the system events. System events can be events like when a record is being created, when a page is being loaded, when a button is being clicked. So these kind of system events, right? So it helps you add some logic to your system events, including button clicks. So system event includes button click when someone clicks on a button, related record update when a related record gets updated, and visual force pages, right? So it allows you to add logics to buttons, pages, record updates, right? So that's what we do with Apex. Now, um, as you saw that right at the beginning, we talked about it's a strongly typed language. Okay, what's a strongly typed language? A strongly typed language is a language, programming language where you always have to define the data type of the variable. In programming, when you are trying to write a program, you will use variables. You need to use variables, right? So usually there are two types of programming languages: strongly typed and loosely typed. So a loosely typed programming language is where you just define a variable and then later on you can assign any value to the variable. So let's say you have defined a variable x, and as per your requirement you can assign any value to that variable. That can be text, that can be number, that can be date. Okay, but in a strongly typed language, while you're defining a variable, you will also have to define the data type of the variable. So you cannot just go and define x. You'll have to say whether your x is a string or a number or date or time or a boolean, what it is, right? Now, the data type that you define for variable, you can only assign the value of that data type to that variable. So if you define x as a string, you can only assign string to that variable. If you define x as an integer, you can only assign integer to it, right? So that's the concept. So for that reason, whenever you are defining a variable, you always have to define a data type for this. Okay. Now let's have a quick understanding of what all data types are allowed for the variables. In Apex, all variables and expressions have a data type. Okay, and you can also read it as must have a data type. Every variable should have a data type. Okay, and that is one of the following. So these are the primary data types that we use in Apex: primitives, S objects, collections. Okay, so primarily primitives, S objects, collections. Okay, so let's start with primitives. What is primitives? Apex primitive data type includes, okay, so primitive data types are basically the um, Generic data types which are used in some other programming languages also, right? And they are very common in other programmings also, right? So these include things like strings, integers, decimals, booleans, things like this. Okay. So it includes these data types. Under primitive we have boolean. What is a boolean? Boolean can actually contain only a true or false. So boolean is going to be a data type which can either contain a true, false or null, no other value. Decimal, decimal can include a number that includes a decimal point, a number with a decimal point. Double, a 64-bit number with a decimal point. ID is a data type which can hold a valid Salesforce.com ID. This one, this is very specific to uh, Salesforce. So you don't find this ID data type in any other programming language. Others will be visible, but ID is very particular to Salesforce. Then integer, a 32-bit number that does not include a decimal point. Long, a 64-bit number that does not include a decimal point. String, any set of characters surrounded by a single quote. Date, a value that indicates a particular day. Date time, a value that indicates a particular day and time. Time, a value that indicates a particular time. So these are the common or the usual data types, right, which you will use for your variables. Okay. And these are very common in any other programming language. I'm not very sure if any of you have done any programming any time in your life, but if you have done that, even the simplest of programming, you might have come across string, integer, these kind of things at least. Right? Okay. So these primitives are okay to hold single values. Primitive variable, if you define a string that can hold a text, then if you define an integer that can hold a number, you define a decimal that can hold a number with a decimal point, right? So these data types are absolutely fine if you are dealing with single value. Hmm? So if your variable needs to hold a single value, let's say my variable needs to hold name of the month. So in that case, which data type I should use? My data type, my variable needs to be the name of the month. Which data type should I use from here? Anyone? Name of month,
String.
string. Number of month,
Integer.
and my data type needs to hold a value, whether an year is a leap year or not. An year is leap year or not. That information I need to store. Which data type will be used? Which one?
Boolean.
Boolean. Right. So pretty simple. Right. So there's nothing very difficult to understand here. Now the point is that in Salesforce we deal with records. Single values are absolutely fine, but in Salesforce you deal with a record, and you will also have to define variable for a record. If you have to define a variable for an account record, which data type will you pick from here? Account is an object. Account has multiple fields. So one record of account basically has a lot of fields, and
That's
every field
object.
has, yeah. So I'll just come to that. So every record has a few fields, and every field has a value. So basically, when I'm talking about a record, when we are talking about the records in Salesforce, I cannot pick one data type from here for a record because record is collection of multiple values. Right. Like for example, take account. Account has a name, it has a type, it has an industry, it has a phone number, it has a fax number, created date, last modified date, number of employees, annual revenue. There are so many fields, right? So it's a collection of values, right? And since we are writing this program to work on Salesforce, we will obviously need to deal with records, right? So we need now data type for defining records also. Single value data types primitives is absolutely fine. But now let's look into how do we deal with full record? What kind of a variable can we define? For that we have another type, another data type which is S object. S object is very simple. S object stands for Salesforce object. It stands for Salesforce object. Salesforce object means you can define any Salesforce object as a data type. Okay? You can define any Salesforce object as a data type for a variable, and then that variable can hold the record for that particular object. So it's like okay. So here in S object, when I say it stands for Salesforce object, so the Salesforce object data type allows you to define a data type for any object. You can define a variable account A. So A is the variable name, account is the data type. Now this A can hold a full account record. The same way, contact C. C is the variable, contact is the data type. The C being a record of data type contact object can hold a complete contact record. Opportunity O. O can hold a complete opportunity record. Correct. So this is how it works. So we have the option of defining different data types and for different objects. So including all the standard and all the custom objects, you can define the data types. Clear? Okay. Now let's have a look at the term S object refers to any object that can be stored in Force.com platform database. Okay. So S object refers to Salesforce object. Any object, standard as well as custom, which can be stored in the Force.com platform database. An S object variable represents a row of data. So an S object variable, a variable having the data type of an S object, basically represents a row of data from that object and can only be declared in Apex. So this is again something which is very specific to Apex. Primitive data types, string, integer, you will find in any other language. This is something which you are not going to find in any other language. Okay. For an example, account A equals a new account and all that stuff, like my custom object and this. Fine. So how do we define it? Let's have a look at it. So you can say account A equals a new account. Name equals
The
ABC.
screen is frozen. We are not able to see.
One second.
Yeah, we
Is
are
it
able to see
fine?
now.
Is it fine? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So how do you define an S object? Define it like this. Account A equals new account equals ABC type equals XYZ, industry equals prep. So this is how you can actually go ahead and define your data types. Fine. This is how we can actually go and define our as object data type. Correct. So you are assigning other values to the fields also within this. Another way of defining a subject data type is this is where you are talking about a new record, new values, right? If you want to define a variable for an existing record in the database, then you can write it like this: account A equals select name type industry from account where ID equals ABCXYZ, let's say. Got it? So in this case, A is a new record, and I have given the value for that. In this, A is an existing record, and I am writing a query to extract the value of it from the database. Right. So same way, you can say contact C equals a new contact. So in case your variable which you are actually talking about does not exist in the database as of now, then you can define it like this: contact C is equal to a new contact. Here you can say first name equals G, last name equals, and so on. You can actually keep on putting all other values also. Hmm? After this, I can write insert C. This insert C will insert this record in my database. Okay. After that, you can say contact C1 equals select first name, last name, email from contact where first name, last name, email from contact where equals fine.
Jeet, one question. Why would it be C1 and why not C?
Because you've already defined C. Because you have already defined C and you are actually giving some other value to C, right? So if you use one
And
variable for
had
one purpose,
okay, and if we'd not written this insert C command and we
hmm.
would have directly jumped to the last line, then we would write contact C is equal to select first name last name, right?
Yeah, you can see basically you are assigning variable values to the variable. So there is no problem with that. Okay, variable is meant for changing the values. Got it?
So how do you actually sequence it? Now, for example, if there was another condition that we were putting another select
One quick
command.
second. One quick second. See, again, let's understand one thing that
Mm-hmm.
first of all, going back to that thing that okay, let's plan the questions, and secondly, let's have questions which are specific to today's topic. Some of you might have done some programming earlier. Some of you might be very new. So if we are talking about data types, let's understand data type. We are talking about very basic thing, and there are people who are actually trying to understand the data type right now, and I am also talking about data type, right? So let's keep these questions. The moment you start writing program, you will start understanding those things. Okay, whether a variable can have a certain value or not, why this, why that. So I hope that makes sense for most of us. Fine. Like, um, first of all, let's understand the syntax, data types, and after that, when you start writing program, you yourself will start understanding things. Okay. So what we do, we create insert a new contact, and then I have selected, I've defined another variable. In that variable, I fetched the value of that contact again. All right. Now here, what you can do, you can write it like this: c dot first name equals something else. Let's say vj date c. Got it. So in the first case, what we have actually taken a variable which holds a value which does not exist in the database. There we perform an insert operation. Second variable, we are talking about the first name, last name to be extracted, an email address to be extracted from the database, and then you can actually update the values and update the record. Update C, it's only update C. Got it? So whenever you are dealing with S object, either you are gonna supply the value to that new record, or you are gonna retrieve the value using a query. Fine. So this is how it's gonna happen. This is how it's gonna go. Clear? Any questions on this? Let me know.
Will that be C1 dot first name?
Which one? Yeah, this will be C1 dot first name. Correct. Okay. Now we have seen S object also, right? So if I have a single value, then use a primitive. Let's say just have a name. Then I'll use a S object. If I have a variable where I need to store the ID of a record, then I will use ID. For storing one text string, I can use string. But for storing a complete account record, the data type should be account, the S object basically, right? You can define S object for custom objects also. So it's not just that only standard objects can be defined as S object. But whenever you are defining it for a custom object, you should be using the API name of the custom object, which will have a double underscore C along with it. Okay. Now, then comes the collection. So far, whatever we have talked about, all these variables are single, variables that just have one value. Like even when I'm talking about this S object, my S object has one record, right? Now, how do we deal with collections? Collection is basically that putting multiple values into a variable. So defining variables which can hold multiple values. So here we are talking about collection of primitives or S objects. Collection can be of primitive, it can be of S objects. So first of all, let's look into primitive. You define string like this: string color equals pink. This is a single S object variable. Sorry, not S object variable. This is a string. So this variable can hold only one string. But if you have to define a collection of string, you can define it like this. This is something which can hold multiple values in it. You can define it like new string red, green, pink, blue, right? Now, another way of writing the same is list of. So this statement and this statement are exactly same. There is no difference. Bsaics equals new list of. Okay, so this is how you define a list. Now, after you have defined the list, you want to add one more value to it. All that you have to do is you just have to go and say weekdays dot add Friday. Got it? So this value will also get added to this. Clear? How we are defining list of primitives. This primitive basically. Now there's one thing that you have to understand. The list of a primitive is always an ordered list. List is an ordered collection. Okay, this list and this, they are same actually. Okay, there's no difference, just that two different ways of writing. So the list thing that we see, list is an ordered collection of values. Ordered collection of values means these values are going to be in the same order as they enter into the list, and they will have to stay in the same order. They all will have an index number assigned. Clear? Now, for example, now in my weekdays, what all values are there in weekdays as of now? After this line got executed, how many values do I have in this weekdays list?
5.
5. So out of these 5 values, I say list is an ordered collection. My list has 5 values. Out of these 5 values, each value will have an index number, which you will not get to see, but it will have. Okay. So index number for Monday is going to be 0. For Tuesday it's going to be 1. For Wednesday it's going to be 2. For Thursday it's going to be 3. For Friday it's going to be 4. You won't get to see it. I mean, but every value that enters into the list is assigned an index number. Okay. Now, the moment it is assigned an index number, the index number starts with 0. The first one starts with 0. Obvious. Now, the next one will be 1, 2, 3, 4, that way. Okay. How does that make a difference to us? How does that actually functionally make a difference? The logic is very simple. The reason why every value is being assigned an index number is these values are now identified by their index numbers. So the index number is the unique identifier for these values. The value itself is not the unique identifier. When you join a company, your name is there in your appointment letter, and then there is an employee ID, right? Why is employee ID given to you? Because that's going to be your employee ID is going to be your unique identifier, correct? So, which means the company is going to allow two people with the same name, and they cannot make the name as a unique identifier. Same concept applies here. Each value that enters the list gets an index number, and that index number is the unique identifier for that value, which means the value itself is not a unique identifier, the index number is. In other words, you can also say that the value itself is not unique, which means if you want, you can enter one more Monday here. So I can have duplicate values within the list. It will not have any problem having this Monday, because this Monday will be entered as an index 5. Clear? Logic is clear. So a list can basically, the crux of the story is that your list of primitives or list of a subject, anything, it will allow duplicate values. It won't restrict duplicate values. Okay. So if you now go and say weekdays dot get, okay, what will it return?
Monday.
It will return Monday. Now what will it return?
Monday.
It will again return Monday. Okay. So because the same Monday is actually appearing on the 0 instance as well as the 2 instance. Got it? So this is how your list thing works. On the contrary, now if you are not very happy and satisfied with the list because it's allowing duplicate values, so see, sometimes we have that requirement. You won't understand, uh, you know, right now, but the moment you start writing program, you will see that sometimes you have that requirement to allow the duplicate value, right? So, for example, think about it. Um, okay, just take a small example. Okay, the last 5 years, you just want to create a list of in the last 5 years or in last 10 quarters, from which company you have got maximum revenue, the biggest deal in last 10 quarters. Okay, which client gave you the biggest revenue, largest revenue from which client? Okay, it's for 10 quarters. So first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, last 10 quarters. In this case, same company can be repeated. There can be a scope that the company from which gave me the biggest business in 2014 quarter one gave me a very good business in 2015 quarter one also, or maybe some other quarter in 2015. So here I may have that requirement that I need to allow the duplicate value. Got it? So this is a kind of list. If you are creating this kind of a list, then you will need to allow duplicate values. The same company will appear twice. So quarter one, this was the company. Quarter five also, this company gave us maximum revenue, let's say. Okay. Now sometimes you will have a requirement of allowing only unique values. Okay. Unique value allowing means think of a situation where I tell you that okay, give me a list of accounts where we don't have any opportunity. This is where you don't need duplicate values. Okay. Either the account has opportunities or it does not have opportunity. If it has opportunity, it should not be included in the list. If it does not have opportunity, it should be included in the list, but only once. Here, duplicate value should not be allowed. Right? For that, we have another thing called set. Okay. There is another thing called set. What is set? Set is an unordered collection. So if I write the same thing here, but if instead of a list I make it a set, okay, and then if I say details dot add, if I try to do the same thing, Friday, Friday will get added. But if I try to add Monday, it will see that Monday is already there and it will not add anything to that. That's it. Because here there is no index number concept in set. Every value is itself a unique identifier for itself. Correct? So Monday is a unique identifier. Tuesday is a unique identifier. You cannot enter second Tuesday. Correct? So the moment you realize that no, I want to deal with only unique values, then you should use a set. If you feel that I need to allow duplicate values, then you should use a list. Clear? List and set difference. Are we clear on this? What is a list? What is a
This
set?
is on the
Hmm.
on the set. Should it be new set or new list? Set.
Oh, sorry. No set. Yes. Okay. So for collection, there are three things which we have seen, and three ways of defining collection: string, list of string, set of string. Okay, these two things are same. These two are exactly same. There is no difference between these two. Okay, this is also list. This is also list. Just that the way you are writing is different. This is set of string. Clear? So that's how it is defined. So these are the data types. Now we will start talking about a few more concepts. Let me know before I start talking about classes and methods. Do we have any questions? Anyone? No, we are all good. Okay. Now we have understood the basic data types. Now we will write examples and then you guys will understand what can be done and what cannot be done. So that's something which we will do. Before that, there is another thing that you need to understand before we start writing the code. Start doing some examples. Um, what is a class? Anyone who has done a bit of programming or something like that? What is the class?
Combination of variable and methods, or variable and function.
Now, what is a function?
A method.
Yeah, so what is a method?
Method is basically what variable is returning. I mean, if you give the variable value, the return value will be
Okay. See, uh, okay. So let me put it in very, very simple words again for people who do not have much understanding of programming. Defining variables is not gonna, solve the purpose. Why are we defining variable? Variable is just something which is going to be used in the script, right? It's just a character in the script, but your script should also have what exactly that character is going to do, right? You're making a movie, you have taken Shah Rukh Khan for the movie, and you also have to define somewhere that what exactly he's going to do, right? So the same way, when you define a variable, a string or an integer or something else, let's say Boolean. Point is that all these variables are being defined to perform something, to perform some action, to execute some code, or to do something. But just defining the variable is not doing anything itself. If you say, I just say string a equals abcd. So what? If string a is the value of string a is abcd, then what? What do we need to do with it? Right? That's something which needs to be defined in a method. Okay, so in your program you will have variable and then you will have methods. So method is what will have the instructions written inside it, what needs to be done. Correct. For example, I have integer x equals 20, then I have integer y equals 30. Okay, so I say integer x equals to 20, then I say integer y equals to 30, and I give it these two integers to you. Now you will ask, what do you want me to do with these two integers? The same way your program or your computer also asks you, what do you want me to do with this? Then you say, okay, I want you to add this. So you have to define a method for adding. So this is how a method is written. You write the name of the method, initiate the method, close the method, and inside that you say integer z equals x plus y. Return z. So what is this method going to do? It's going to add both the integers which are supplied and return me the value of the added value basically. Same way I can define one more method subtract. Integer z equals y minus x. Return z. Same way you can have another method multiply. Integer z equals x into y. Say return z. Okay, so I've written instructions inside them, inside the methods. That's what you do with a method. Now, all these things need to be written, starting from here, all these similar methods. So when I call add method, it should add both the integers and give me the result. When I say subtract, it should do the subtraction and give me the result. When I say multiply, it should multiply the values and give me the result. Now, all these things need to be written in one single place. All these methods and variables, all these things will need to be written inside a single place. That's going to be your class. So you have to actually define all these things inside a class. So the class is going to be your outermost boundary for these methods and variables. Got it? Very, very simple language. So you will give a class name, something like this. Okay. Now class is where these variables and methods are defined. Okay. Now whenever you have to call this method, add method, you will have to call it through the class c1 dot add. Or basically the point is that you have to call the class first and then you will have to call the method. Fine. Let me know if anyone has a difficulty understanding what's a class, what's a method, and what's a variable. Variable we have seen. To put instructions to the variables, we need the methods. And we define a class inside which we define all our variables and methods which are used for a particular functionality. For example, I call this class as mathematics. Okay. Instead of C1, let me call it mathematics. So all similar kind of functionalities related to mathematics have been written here, which use the same variable and all. Those methods I have written here. Fine. Same way I can have another class for grammar, where all grammar related functions can be written. The same way I can have one more class for let's say history, where all history related methods are written. So basically grouping the methods and variables into one single class so that they all can be used for the same kind of a functionality. Yep. Yeah. Let me know if there is any difficulty understanding. So things so far. Okay.
I am on sheet.
Huh.
Not sure is related.
Sorry, not able to hear you
Uh,
very clearly. Uh, Go
can you
ahead.
hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm not sure it's related or not. So what is the implication of constructor? Sometimes they add construct before the method.
Yeah. So again, constructor is something which we will get into a little later. So forget about it.
Alright. Sorry.
The things which you do not know or you know half, don't worry about that. And see, what we are talking here is very, very simple basic language. Some people who already know programming language might have better definitions of this. So please stick to, if you understand things with a better definition, please stick to that. If you do not understand, if you have any problem understanding what's a class, what's a method, what's a variable, please understand it this way. You will never ever have difficulty in your life with a program. Okay. Now, the point is that we have understood that we define a class and then inside the class we define variables and then along with the variables we define the methods. True. Now that's exactly what we are going to do in our custom controller. That's exactly what happens with the custom controller. Okay. A custom controller, as we have seen, standard controller you guys have seen. Basically, a standard controller is a class. You call what you call is a class. So when you say, I'm just trying to compare these two things. So when you say standard controller equals account, when you say standard controller equals account, what is this account? This account is a class which is defined by Salesforce.com, which you obviously you are not able to see. And when you call different methods, functions inside this, like save function, quick save function, these are all methods inside. Okay, or when you are saying account dot name, these are all methods defined inside that class. So now what we have to do for a custom controller, we also have to define a class. We have to write the variables, we will define the methods, and then we will call them. Now you are able to relate. In Visual Force, what you are doing, you are actually calling the class. There is a class defined by Salesforce which is called account, which has all the functionalities written inside. When you say save, it saves the record, which means actually the code is written that way inside the code, that particular class. Right? So there is a function called save, there is a function called quick save there, or method function, same thing. So there is a method called save, there is a method called quick save which has been defined inside it, and that is what we call. Now, in our next session, you will learn how to create these kind of methods for your own custom controllers. All right. Okay. So we'll start, doing some small examples, and you will have your concepts a little more clear as we get into examples. Yeah. Okay. So let me know if anyone has a question or